My name is Clara, and I'm 32 years old. The lowest point of my life came during a phone call with my mother, just 2 weeks before our big annual family reunion. She told me I was officially uninvited, banned from the one event that was supposed to be about unconditional love, all because, in her words, I was a resounding failure. Little did she know that the failure she was so ashamed of was about to be featured on the cover of Forbes magazine, and the shockwave from that revelation would shatter their perfect, pretentious world forever. The call itself felt like ice water being poured directly into my veins. I was in my small, cluttered office, the one I'd poured my life savings into, surrounded by whiteboards filled with algorithms and prototypes for my tech startup. It was almost midnight. I'd been working for 16 hours straight, fueled by cheap coffee and the sheer belief in what I was building. When my phone rang with my mother's picture on the screen, a small, hopeful part of me thought she was calling to check in, to offer a word of encouragement. I was so wrong. Her voice was cold, rehearsed. "Clara," she began, without any warmth, "your father and I have been talking with your brother and sister. We've reached a consensus. It's for the best if you don't attend the reunion this year." I remember my own voice sounding distant and small when I asked why. The silence on her end was heavy with judgment before she finally spoke. "Darling, we love you, but you've become an embarrassment. Your brother David just made partner at his law firm. Your sister Sarah is redecorating their new 6-bedroom house. And you're playing with computers in a tiny room, living off instant noodles, chasing some childish dream. We can't have our guests asking about you and have to explain that you threw away a promising career to become, well, this. It reflects poorly on the family. Reflects poorly on the family." Those words echoed in my head long after she hung up. My own mother, the woman who was supposed to be my biggest cheerleader, had just branded me a liability. My brother and sister, who I grew up with, had voted me off the island of family respectability. I looked around at the chaos of my office, at the sleepless nights and sacrificed weekends made manifest in piles of paper and wires. This wasn't a game to me. It was my life's work. I was building a company that I just knew, was going to change the way people interact with technology. But to them, if it didn't come with a fancy title and a predictable salary, it was worthless. I was worthless. Have you ever had to stand up for your dreams against the very people who are supposed to support you? Share your story in the comments. Your strength could be the inspiration someone else needs to see today. And if you're here for stories of epic comebacks, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I sat there in the dark, the humiliation of physical weight on my chest, and I felt something shift inside me. It was the last time they would ever make me feel small. They thought they were casting me out into the cold, but they had no idea I was about to set the world on fire. This wasn't a new feeling, this cold sting of disapproval. That phone call was just the official confirmation of a truth I'd lived with my entire life. In the carefully curated portrait of the successful Miller family, I was the smudge they were constantly trying to wipe away. It started long before my startup, long before I ever dreamed of building anything for myself. It started with who I was at my core. My brother David was the golden boy from birth. He was athletic, charming, and followed the life script our father had written for him without question. My sister Sarah was the princess, beautiful, socially adept, and her primary ambition was to marry well, which she did, spectacularly. And then there was me, the quiet, curious one who preferred books to parties, who would rather take apart an old radio to see how it worked than go to a football game. Our home was a showroom for their successes. David's debate team trophies and sports medals crowded the mantelpiece. Framed photos of Sarah winning homecoming queen or on the arm of her wealthy fiancé lined the hallways. My achievements were met with polite but dismissive smiles. I remember being 12 and winning the state science fair for a rudimentary software program I wrote that could organize and search large text files. I was ecstatic. I came home with a blue ribbon and a small trophy, my heart pounding with pride. My father glanced at it and said, "That's nice, Clara. Just make sure you don't get your hopes up with these little computer hobbies." That same evening, he spent half an hour on the phone, boasting to my uncle that David, who was 14, had scored a single goal in his junior varsity soccer game. My trophy was placed behind a large vase on a side table, barely visible. David's muddy cleats were treated with more reverence. This pattern only intensified as we got older. The family's definition of success was incredibly narrow: law, medicine, or finance for a man, marrying into one of those for a woman. When I announced I was majoring in computer science, you would have thought I'd declared my intention to join a circus. My father sighed with theatrical disappointment. What kind of career is that for a young woman? You'll be stuck in a basement with a bunch of socially awkward boys. No one respectable will want to marry you. My mother was worse, her concern veiled in cloying sweetness. But darling, she'd said, clutching her pearls, what about finding a husband? Sarah is already engaged to a lovely boy from a good family. Your brother is on the fast track to a great law firm. You need to think about your future. My future, in their eyes, was not my own to build, but a supporting role I was meant to audition for. The financial double standard was the most galling part. When David went to law school, my parents proudly co-signed a 6-figure loan and paid his rent for 3 years so he could focus on his studies. When Sarah got married, they threw her a wedding that cost more than my entire college education, complete with an ice sculpture of a swan. When I finally quit my stable, but soul-crushing corporate programming job 2 years ago to launch my own company, I went to them. I didn't ask for a handout. I came with a full business plan, market analysis, and a prototype. I asked for a modest seed loan, a fraction of what they'd spent on Sarah's wedding flowers, offering them a generous equity stake in return. My father didn't even look at the proposal. He pushed it back across the table and laughed. Not a mean laugh, but something worse, a pitying, condescending chuckle. Clara, he said, shaking his head. Let's be realistic. We invest in sure things. David is a sure thing. Sarah's marriage is a sure thing. This little computer game of yours is a gamble, and we don't gamble on family. The last time I saw them all together was at Christmas, 6 months before the infamous phone call. The entire evening was a masterclass in passive aggression. My brother David, smug in his new designer suit, spent the night quizzing me about my business venture with the tone of a prosecutor cross-examining a fraudulent witness. So, are you profitable yet, Clara? Got any big clients? Or is it still just you in a room? Sarah would chime in with pitying looks, saying things like, "Oh, it must be so hard. Don't you worry about, retirement? Health insurance?" My father made a toast to his 2 successful children, David and Sarah, and their wonderful spouses, never once mentioning my name. I was an invisible ghost at their feast of self-congratulation. They weren't just unsupportive. They were actively rooting for my failure. Because if I failed, it would prove them right. It would validate their narrow worldview and justify their lifelong dismissal of me. My success, on my own terms, was the one thing their fragile egos couldn't handle. After my mother hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat in the deafening silence of my office, the glow of my monitor illuminating the equations on the whiteboard. The humiliation was so profound, so complete, that it burned away all the sadness and left behind something hard and clear. It was a decision. For years, I had been operating under the delusion that if I just worked hard enough, if I just became successful enough, I would finally earn their love and respect. That phone call was the final, brutal piece of evidence that I was wrong. Their approval was a prize I could never win because the game was rigged. They didn't want me to succeed. They needed me to be the failure to make their own mediocre achievements shine brighter. And in that moment, I decided to stop playing their game. The real turning point, the catalyst that transformed that quiet decision into a concrete plan, came 3 days later. It arrived not as a dramatic confrontation, but as a simple email with the subject line, "Following up, Innovate AI." It was from Julian Vance, a legendary venture capitalist in Silicon Valley, a man whose name was whispered with reverence in the tech world. I had sent a cold email to his firm 6 months prior, a Hail Mary pass with my pitch deck attached. I never heard back and assumed it had been lost in the digital ether, just another dream swallowed by a crowded inbox. I had almost forgotten about it. My heart hammered against my ribs as I opened it. The email was short and direct. Julian had personally reviewed my pitch deck for my company, Nexus AI, not Innovate AI, as he'd mistakenly written. He said my core algorithm for predictive data analysis was, and I quote, the most elegant and potentially disruptive piece of code I've seen in a decade. He wanted a meeting, a video call, the next day. I felt a surge of validation so powerful it almost knocked the wind out of me. Someone saw it. Someone who actually understood this world. Someone whose opinion could make or break companies. Saw the value in what I was building. It wasn't a little computer game. It was elegant. It was disruptive. For a moment, my old instincts kicked in. My first thought was, I have to tell my parents. They'll finally see. But then the cold clarity from 3 nights before washed over me again. Why? Why did I still feel this compulsive need to show them? To prove my worth to people who had already passed sentence? That's when the second, more important revelation hit me. I looked at the email again. Innovate AI. Why had he called it that? My company was Nexus AI. A quick search answered my question and sent a chill down my spine. Innovate AI was a new, flashy startup that had just secured a huge round of funding. Their founder, a slick business graduate with no tech background. Their advertised product? A predictive data analysis tool that sounded eerily similar to mine. Too similar. And then I saw who their lead investor was. A mid-level partner at a prestigious law firm in my city. The same firm where my brother David had just been made partner. It all clicked into place with horrifying speed. My business plan. The one I'd brought to my father, the one he'd slid back across the table with a pitying laugh. I had left it there. In my haste and hurt, I had forgotten it on his desk. David must have found it. He must have taken my core ideas, my market analysis, my entire strategy, and passed it along to his friend, this founder of Innovate AI. He hadn't just been unsupportive, he had actively sabotaged me. He had stolen my dream and sold it for parts to advance his own network, confident that his failure of a sister would never be in a position to find out. The rage that filled me was cold and sharp as a shard of glass. This wasn't just about being unloved or disrespected anymore. This was theft. This was betrayal on a level I couldn't have imagined. My own brother. He hadn't just rooted for my failure. He had engineered it. That was the true turning point. The fight was no longer about earning their approval. It was about taking back what was mine and making sure they understood, in no uncertain terms, who they had messed with. Julian Vance's email wasn't just an opportunity anymore. It was a weapon, and I was going to learn how to use it. From that moment on, I moved with a purpose I had never felt before. The next few months were a blur of silent, relentless work. I operated in stealth mode. I stopped answering texts from my family. I let their calls go to voicemail, where they left messages ranging from my mother's saccharine, manipulative concern to my father's gruff demands for a callback. They thought my silence was shame. They thought I was hiding in my little office, licking my wounds. Let them think that. Their ignorance was my shield. My first move was the video call with Julian Vance. I spent 24 hours preparing, polishing my presentation, and anticipating every question. But I also added a new, crucial slide. It was titled Market Competition and Intellectual Property Concerns. I walked him through my algorithm, the core of Nexus AI. Then I showed him the public-facing material from Innovate AI. I didn't make accusations. I didn't mention my brother. I simply laid out the facts. The uncanny similarities in language, the identical target market, the timeline of their launch, which suspiciously followed my pitch to other, smaller local investors, the pitch I now knew my brother had access to. I presented it as a strategic problem to be solved. Julian, a man who had seen every trick in the book, listened intently, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "This is more than a coincidence, Clara. This is actionable, but a legal fight will be expensive and public. Are you prepared for that?" I looked him straight in the eye through the camera and said, "I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to protect my work. But I believe there's a smarter way. The best revenge isn't a lawsuit. It's to beat them so decisively in the market that they become a footnote." A slow smile spread across Julian's face. "I like you, Clara," he said. "Let's bury them." That conversation opened the floodgates. Julian didn't just invest, he became my mentor, my champion. He brought in his team of legal and financial experts. We immediately filed provisional patents for every unique aspect of my code, creating a digital fortress around my intellectual property. They were time-stamped, irrefutable proof that I was there first. While David's friends at Innovate AI were busy issuing press releases about their funding, we were quietly building a superior product. I worked 18-hour days, refining my algorithm, making it faster, more accurate, more powerful than the stolen, watered-down version they were trying to launch. Julian's investment allowed me to finally move out of my cramped office and hire a small team of the brightest engineers I could find, people who shared my passion and believed in the mission. We were a lean, hungry machine, fueled by pizza and a shared sense of purpose. While all this was happening, I was also playing a long game. I hired a private investigator, a discreet professional recommended by Julian's legal team. I didn't want dirt, I wanted confirmation. I wanted a clean, undeniable trail of evidence linking my brother David to the founder of Innovate AI. It didn't take long. The investigator uncovered email chains, meeting records, even a financial record showing a consulting fee paid to David from Innovate AI's parent company just weeks after I had left my business plan at my father's house. It was the smoking gun. I took the file, locked it in a safe, and continued to build. The final piece of my quiet rise came from an unexpected source. A journalist from Forbes, a woman named Catherine Reed who specialized in profiling disruptive tech startups, had gotten wind of Nexus AI through Julian's network. She reached out, intrigued by the whispers of a new AI company that was poised to upend the industry. We had several long conversations. I told her my story, not the family drama, but the story of a woman in tech who built something from scratch, who fought to innovate in a crowded field. She was captivated by the technology, but also by the narrative of the underdog. She told me they were planning a special issue, The New Faces of Tech, the Innovators of Tomorrow. She wanted me on the cover. The issue was scheduled to hit newsstands on the Saturday of my family's annual reunion. The timing was so perfect, it felt like cosmic justice. I agreed, and for the photo shoot, I wore a dress the color of fire. The day of the family reunion arrived. It was a perfect, sunny Saturday. I pictured them all gathering at my parents' house, the same sprawling backyard where I was never quite good enough. I imagined the forced laughter, the clinking glasses of champagne, the endless bragging. My mother, preening over Sarah's latest social triumph. My father, holding court with David, the newly minted law firm partner. They would probably mention my absence with a sad shake of their heads, a performance of pity for the benefit of their guests. Poor Clara, they would say. She's struggling. We thought it best to give her some space. I, however, was not struggling. I was in a car, being driven to the reunion. I hadn't been invited, but I was coming anyway, and I wasn't coming alone. In my lap was a briefcase. Inside was a copy of the investigator's report and 10 pristine copies of the brand new Forbes magazine. My face was on the cover. The headline, in bold letters, read, Clara Miller's Nexus AI, the billion-dollar algorithm built in secret. I had timed my arrival for peak mingling time, just as my father would be starting his annual State of the Family toast. I walked not through the front door, but around the side of the house, through the open gate leading to the backyard. The chatter died down in waves as people turned to see me. It was like a scene from a movie. 100 heads, all swiveling in my direction. My mother's smile froze on her face. My father, glass raised mid-toast, stared as if he'd seen a ghost. Sarah's jaw dropped, but my eyes were locked on my brother David. I saw the flash of anger in his eyes, quickly replaced by confusion. Then a dawning horror as he took in my confident stride, my sharp suit, the unapologetic look on my face. Clara, my father finally managed to say, his voice tight, you weren't invited. I know, I said, my voice calm and carrying easily across the now silent yard. I was banned for being a failure, an embarrassment, but I thought you might want to see what my failure looks like. I walked to the central table, opened my briefcase, and placed the magazines down, fanning them out like a poker hand. I slid one directly in front of my father. The silence was absolute, broken only by the first gasp from a cousin who was close enough to read the headline. Then another. A ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. My mother walked forward, her face pale, and picked one up as if it might bite her. She stared at my face on the cover, then at the headline, her perfectly composed world visibly cracking. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "That," I said, turning to face all of them, "is my little computer game. It's called Nexus AI. It's a company that just closed a Series A funding round of $50 million, led by Julian Vance." I let his name hang in the air. Even in their insulated world, that name meant something. The company is currently valued at $500 million and is projected to hit $1 billion within 18 months. I saw Sarah swaying slightly, her hand going to her husband's arm for support. My father looked like he'd been punched in the gut, but I wasn't finished. I turned my full attention to David, whose face had gone from ashen to a blotchy, panicked red. "You know, it's a funny thing about the tech world, David," I said, my voice dropping into a colder, more precise register. "It's all about innovation, original ideas. So I found it very interesting when another company, Innovate AI, popped up with a business model that looked remarkably similar to the one I left on Dad's desk 6 months ago, the one he laughed at. I saw my father flinch. A company, as it turns out, that paid you a rather generous consulting fee for your legal advice. I have the receipts." The gasp from the crowd was sharp and collective. All eyes were now on David, who looked like a cornered animal. "That's a lie," he sputtered, his voice cracking. "She's crazy. She's making it all up." "Am I?" I said softly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I held up the investigator's report. "This file contains the email correspondence between you and their CEO. It details how you passed along my proprietary market research, my coding architecture concepts, my financial projections. In the legal world, David, I believe they call that corporate espionage. Theft of intellectual property. It's a felony. Your new partners at the firm might find that, what was the phrase you all used? Reflects poorly on the family." My father finally found his voice, a weak, sputtering roar. "That's enough, Clara. This is a private family matter." "No," I said, turning to him, the ice in my voice unwavering. "It stopped being a private matter when you decided my worth was a topic for public discussion and humiliation. It stopped being a family matter when my own brother stole from me to get ahead. You all wanted me to be a failure. You were so invested in that narrative that you couldn't see the truth right in front of you. You didn't just underestimate me, you tried to destroy me. Well, look around. Look at me. I am not the failure here." I let the words hang in the suffocating silence. The party was over. The perfect Miller family portrait was shattered, and they were all left standing in the wreckage, finally seeing me for who I truly was. Not the failure, not the embarrassment, but the one who held all the cards. If you've ever had a moment of sweet, hard-won justice like this, hit that like button. Let's celebrate these victories together. I didn't stay to watch the full implosion. I had said what I came to say. I placed the investigator's report back in my briefcase, gave one last, sweeping look at the stunned faces of the relatives and guests, turned my back on my family, and walked away. The silence held until I reached the gate, and then a chaotic eruption of voices broke out behind me. It didn't matter. I didn't look back. That life, that yard, that family, it wasn't mine anymore. In that moment, walking away felt more like a victory than any argument I could have won. It was the feeling of pure, unburdened freedom. The fallout was swift and catastrophic for them, and I watched it all from a safe, detached distance. The story of what happened at the reunion spread like wildfire through their social and professional circles. The Golden family had been publicly tarnished, not by an outsider, but from within. My brother David's career, the one built on a foundation of lies and entitlement, crumbled first. One of the guests at the party was a senior partner from a rival law firm. He wasted no time in spreading the story. Within a week, David was called into a meeting with the managing partners of his firm. He was given a choice: resign immediately and quietly, or be fired and face a formal ethics investigation that would likely get him disbarred. He resigned. The sure thing my father had bet on was suddenly worthless. My sister Sarah's perfect life also began to unravel. Her husband, whose own family valued reputation above all else, was mortified. The scandal of having a brother-in-law accused of corporate espionage and a family that would so cruelly cast out one of their own was a stain on their pristine image. Their social invitations dried up. The whispers followed them everywhere. The 6-bedroom house felt less like a palace and more like a prison. The foundation of their marriage, built on social status and appearances, was shaken to its core. My parents faced a different kind of ruin. Their entire identity was wrapped up in the success of their children. Now their son was a disgraced lawyer, and their daughter was a social pariah. And their other daughter, the one they had written off as a failure, was a tech mogul who wanted nothing to do with them. They were left with nothing to brag about, no vicarious achievements to polish. They became objects of pity and gossip, the very thing they had feared most. My mother tried calling me dozens of times. The voicemails were a pathetic progression from tearful apologies to desperate pleas for me to fix this, as if I had a magic wand to restore the reputation they had shattered themselves. My father sent one stiff, formal email, not apologizing, but asking what it would take for me to retract my public statements about David. I deleted them all without replying. As for me, my victory wasn't just in their downfall, but in my own ascent. The Forbes article created a tidal wave of interest in Nexus AI. We were flooded with partnership offers and talent applications. We beat Innovate AI to market by 6 months, with a product that was light years ahead of their stolen concept. They quietly folded within a year, a casualty of their own fraud. My company thrived. My team grew. I moved into a beautiful new office with floor-to-ceiling windows, a world away from the cluttered room where I had received that fateful phone call. I was no longer living off instant noodles. I was building an empire, but the real freedom wasn't financial. It was the silence, the absence of their judgment, their expectations, their constant, draining disapproval. I had finally stopped seeking validation from the wrong people and found it within myself and the incredible work we were doing. I was free. Looking back on it all now, it's strange to think how much I used to crave their approval. For so many years, their perception of me defined my own self-worth. I was the failure, the disappointment, the embarrassment, because that's what they told me I was. The most important lesson I learned through this whole ordeal is that you cannot let people who don't see your value determine your price. They wanted me to fit into a neat little box that made them comfortable, a box labeled less than. The moment I stopped trying to squeeze myself into it was the moment I truly started to build my own world. My success isn't measured by the money or the magazine covers, though those things are certainly validating. The real success is the peace I feel now. It's in the camaraderie I share with my team, the found family who see my passion and share my vision. It's in the quiet confidence I have in my own abilities, a confidence that no one can take away from me. I didn't just build a company. I rebuilt myself on a foundation of self-respect. They thought banning me from a party was the ultimate punishment, but it turned out to be the ultimate gift. It forced me to finally, completely let go. Sometimes, the most empowering thing you can do is walk away from a table where respect is no longer being served. You have to be willing to bet on yourself, especially when no one else will. Your path might be lonely for a while. You might have to eat instant noodles in a cluttered office and work while everyone else is sleeping. But your dream, the one that sets your soul on fire, is worth it. Don't let anyone, not even the people who are supposed to love you most, dim that fire. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever felt underestimated or had to fight for your own dream, know that you are not alone. Your story matters. Please share a piece of your journey in the comments below, because your resilience could be the spark that ignites someone else's courage. And if you enjoyed this story of turning the tables, please subscribe and turn on notifications. There are many more stories of justice and empowerment to come. Remember, the best revenge is not just massive success. It's being so busy building your own happiness that you forget they ever existed.